Hey crafter! Today I'm sharing a DIY to repair a towel bar that had come off the wall, and I'm also going to share the products that ensure this DIY will last. So after this original towel rack had been torn off the wall and rehung several times, the wall was an absolute mess. As such, the towel rack couldn't be mounted securely to the wall and it kept falling off. So the fix was to mount a piece of wood to the wall and hang the towel bar on that. The first step is to prep your piece of wood. I used a pine 1x4 that was longer than my towel rack and large enough to cover the mess on the wall. The towel bar was about 2 feet wide, so the wood was probably about 2.5 feet wide. Once the wood piece was cut to my desired size, we routed the edges for a more finished look. Whether you route the edge of your board or not, make sure to sand all the edges of your board. You don't want your towels to snag on the wood. Once your board is cut to size, we need to drill holes for mounting the board to the wall, as well as holes for mounting the towel rack to the wood. I don't have footage of drilling the holes since this project was partly underway by the time I got involved, but this is a pretty straightforward process. First, find studs in your wall, measure the distance between the studs, and drill 2 sets of holes through your board the width of the studs. We also used a countersink bit on these 4 holes since we plan to cover the screw holes with wooden caps for a more finished look. Then drill holes for the mounting gear that comes with your towel rack. In my case, this meant drilling 2 more holes the width of my towel rack. Once all my holes were drilled, I sanded the board to prep for staining. To stain my wood, I'm using this Minwax Wood Finish Penetrating Stain in the color Golden Pecan. This product works great every time I've ever used it. It's super easy to use, and I was so happy that I was able to get a near exact match with the wood trim that was already in the bathroom. After choosing my stain and covering my work area, it was time to apply the stain. Basically, I followed the instructions on the can, which meant gently stirring my stain and then applying it with a brush, sponge, or like I'm using, an old rag. Once my piece was completely covered in stain, I used another rag to wipe off the excess. Then I let it sit for 2 hours to dry. I also stained the 4 wood caps that I'll use to cover the screw holes where the board is mounted to the wall. While my stain was drying, I found the paint can for the bathroom and touched up the old patch areas. The wood mostly covers the patch jobs, but some spots were still visible. A little touch-up with some paint was a great way to disguise those blemishes. When 2 hours had passed, I checked on the stain and found that the color was a perfect match. Now all I needed to do before hanging was protect the wood so that way this repair will last. I wanted to avoid a poly finish because my color match was perfect and polys tend to yellow over time. After doing some research, aka reading the specs of a million finishes in the stain aisle, I decided this can of Minwax Indoor Helmsman Spar Urethane was just what I needed. It both creates a smooth finish so the towels won't snag, and it protects the wood from the moisture in the bathroom. To apply, I again followed the instructions on the can. I stirred the product and applied my first coat with a brush. Now I knew I wanted to do at least 2 coats, so instead of washing my brush out, I wrapped it in plastic so it would be ready to use in 4 hours for the second coat. After my first coat dried, I sanded the board and prepped for another coat of spar urethane, brushed off the dust from sanding, and applied my second coat. 4 hours later, that coat was done and I gave everything one last sanding. I really wanted to do a 3rd coat, but I ran out of time, so 2 had to be good enough for me. Per the instructions on the can, I let it sit for 24 hours and then came back the next day to hang it all up. Once my board was level on the wall, I ran 4 screws through the board to mount it to the wall and then covered the screw holes with wooden pegs. The pegs were a little bit tight, so we had to hammer them in. To minimize denting the pegs, we used a towel to soften the blow. Then I attached the towel bar mounts to the board. Once those were fastened securely, I mounted the towel bar and secured it in place with set screws. A little tip for this part is to put a towel on the floor to cover any air vents so that way when you inevitably drop the set screws, you don't lose them down the vent. And now my towel bar was securely mounted. This DIY not only solved the problem of a loose towel bar, but it also looks so much nicer than it did before. On another note, the stain and spar urethane both worked phenomenally. I've used the Minwax stain before, always with great results, but this was my first time using the spar urethane. This towel bar DIY repair has been up for several months by the time I'm posting this, and both products are holding up great, even with the occasional high humidity levels in the bathroom. So if you find yourself with a towel bar that has been knocked off the wall too many times and just won't mount securely anymore, this is a simple DIY fix that doesn't involve redoing the wall. Thanks so much for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Happy crafting!